Welcome to the Upfront Podcast, where you get your weekly dose of upfront discussions with people from all around the world. Today's guest is the incredible Elizabeth Bass. Elizabeth was born in Moscow and then raised in Dhaka in Bangladesh until the age of 19. She then went on to study in the US and afterwards worked and lived in Malaysia, Cambodia, Nepal, Indonesia, and Russia, and then eventually moved to Israel 4 years ago. She has studied psychology, and nowadays she works as a jeweler and a yoga teacher. She will share a personal story, which is why I have to add a content warning here. Please be aware that this episode contains depictions of a violent nature and may not be suitable for all listeners. Please make sure that there are no children around to overhear this episode.
I was born in Russia and I was raised in Bangladesh, which is next to India. It is not India, contrary to popular belief. I went to study in the States when I was 19, and then I came back to Bangladesh. And then I went off to work in Cambodia and in Nepal for a bit and Sri Lanka. And then I went to Russia. And following that, I came to Israel. So it's been 4 years that I've been here.
So what made you move to all these places?
So Malaysia was my first move, I suppose. I was working in advertising at the point, and I had this idea that I wanted more responsibility and to work for a bigger company and to see a different place and kind of understand a different culture better. And then this opportunity came up in Malaysia to work with one of the top 3 biggest ad agencies in the world. And my job would have been to look after like 6 other countries, and I was super stoked. So I went there. But a year into the job, I realized it's not what I thought it would be. So I decided I wanted to work more as a consultant and find the projects and the countries and cultures myself. So the first one I thought of was Cambodia, because they just, Cambodia has a rich history with the Khmer Rouge and a lot of poverty and a lot of development that's going on at the same time. And I thought that's an interesting place to go and work in. So I reached out to a company that I wanted to work with, and I sent them my ideas. And they bought it, which was to my advantage, because that's what I really wanted to do at that time, was to combine travel with work, but not just travel for the sake of coming somewhere for like 2 weeks to rest and leave, but more in the sense of staying in the place, working with people, getting to know how they live, how they work, like what the psychology is about, like how everything kind of moves and comes together. So that took me to Cambodia first, and then I found another project in Thailand, and then I wanted to go to Sri Lanka. It was a combination of both me finding projects I wanted to do ahead of time and also kind of landing there and then seeing what opportunities there are.
I feel like nowadays people are generally more open to moving to other places, which is definitely, in most cases, a very amazing and interesting experience that expands your horizon and, individual growth.
I feel like I've built more of I've found more of my community and my people here over time. And so one of those things that I feel like I had missed out on for a very long time. And I only realized that it was coming together because, like, I trained jiu-jitsu, and I only this year did I realize that this is the community I'd so kind of been longing for and kind of looking for. And I only almost accidentally realized, well, hey, these are my people a year and a half in. Because I think up until this point, like, yes, I would see these people almost every day, and, we chat and things. I'm using giant air quotes right now, like this idea that I had of what my community is and who they are and what we're doing. And the reality is that, maybe like these people have been here all along, and I just didn't consider it because it didn't fit into my idea of things, just like what what a home is, or like being rooted. Like I have a specific, or had a specific idea of like what it would feel like and what it would look like and sound like. But then that feeling is also very internal, and it shifts. It's like a
Mm.
moving target. So for now, I feel pretty rooted in myself, which then makes it easier to root wherever I am.
Yeah, definitely. Do you enrich your background sort of by every experience that you make?
In this transitional kind of like existential place, right?
Hmm.
I feel like I'm a product of two cultures and also two religions. So my
Hmm.
mom's Jewish, my dad's Muslim.
Hmm.
But I went to Catholic schools all my life, so I have that, and I know more about Catholicism probably more than my two religions. Let's say I'm now teaching yoga, and so a lot of what I'm learning in that is Hinduism, and I have my meditation group, which is more rooted in Buddhist thought and philosophy. I feel like at this point I'm a conglomerate of all religions and cultures and experiences. That's kind of the long-term vision, is to evolve myself and take what I've been given by my parents, by my family, and make it even better.
That's beautiful. So you actually mentioned that you studied psychology, right? So what made you pursue this
I
path?
think since I was a kid, I had a deep fascination with trying to understand people and why they act the way they act. Because there's so much that I don't understand, like from little things and like how people talk and why you would say something or do something. Like it always made me go, why would you do that? I don't get
Mm.
it. People being people, I don't think a lot of us even know how to articulate what we're thinking about. Um,
Mhm.
and like I didn't either. And I think I've only just now started understanding the stuff that I'd studied in theory. Like I had one of my favorite professors, Dr. Ken Hoffman, and he said something, almost 10 years ago now. He said, trust the process and, stay in your truth. And they sounded like such like simple, floaty words in a way that like I went, right, okay, that sounds neat. And only now do I understand what he's talking about. So in the same way, like when I started, or when I had this idea of like I want to understand people and help people get better, it came from a place of I wanted to understand myself better and do better and articulate better. And so that kind of just took its own path. And also one of the other ideas I had along the way was to do art therapy with kids, because I love art. Like I paint, I draw, I create things. And I think it's one of the most healing ways to kind of get things out of your system. And you
Mhm.
don't necessarily have to know what's going on. You can maybe see it in hindsight or like work on it later. But like the first thing is to like bring it to the surface. And then you can, question it or work with it. So that's kind of what took me in that direction. Eventually, though, I didn't go down that path, not formally at least. I feel like I still hold that kind of space to help people bring things to the forefront through like what I'm teaching now. Like yoga, it's a lot of embodying and a lot of presence and a lot of centering yourself. So I think the psychology part kind of helped me to get to where I am now.
Yes, I certainly think it does help you understand yourself and your environment better to a certain degree.
Yeah, and we're such complex creatures. Like we're very simple, but also complex at the same time. Like, we kind of revolve around, feed me, love me, keep me warm and safe, but also give me adventure and don't make it boring, and also give me that tiramisu. And I also want to fly, and I don't know why yet, but I'll figure it out.
Mm. So you wanted to share a personal story you told me, right?
Where shall we begin?
Wherever you feel like beginning.
Okay, I I was assaulted in the States the day before my graduation. And there was a moment, I guess, before the assault took place where I thought, okay, I need to leave but at that point in time, I don't think I had the capacity or the gumption or I guess, the self confidence or boundaries or I don't know, whatever it was at that point in time. It just didn't actually occur to me to take the step to leave. And so I ended up in this situation that, where I was taken out, like I was unconscious. And when I came to, my friend was holding me against the wall, and she said, "Don't look down." And, obviously I looked down and I was bleeding, like my face was broken in. And I was taken to the hospital. And while I was there, like I had to have a surgery and it took a very long time for the surgery. And the doctor said, like, I wouldn't be able to walk and all sorts. And one of the things that I kept going over and over in my head was like, why didn't I just leave when I knew to? Like, I had this very strong internal, like, whether it was my intuition or what, like, it just kind of started kicking at me saying, you need to go now. And I didn't. Over the years, I kind of quelled that part of me, because there were many, many other instances and where there would be like a little voice inside of me that would tell me to do something, and I would start arguing with it, even though like that little whatever voice or that intuition or that feeling, it's across the board been correct. And like now I feel like I'm finally getting to that place where I understand what that is even more, and I don't argue with it anymore, which makes things so much simpler, and which makes things so much more fluid in a way of I don't need to know why something inside of me tells me that this is the truth of the moment, that I need to do something for myself, whether it's to keep myself safe or to keep people around me safe or whatever the situation is asking of me. But it's just like knowing that I don't need to argue with it and it's there for a reason. And I think it's one of those voices that a lot of people will talk about and say that I don't need to listen to myself or I need to listen to myself better, but we don't actually always know what that means until we've gone through a whole process of getting to know ourselves and the distinction between what our neurology is, where, sometimes you respond to things because you've been raised a certain way. And so you're used to being presented situations in a certain way. Like, let's say if you've been in an abusive household and you know that you're going to get attention only if you do something bad. And that's your understanding of what love is, that like, I need to do something bad to get the attention. And that's how I know somebody loves me. Like, those are the things that your neurology is going to respond to as you grow older and, go through life. But then there's also this other part of the equation where A, you can change that, and B, you can also get to know the deepest part of yourself, whether you call it your inner child, your intuition, like your little voice, whatever that part of you is, it's that it holds a bigger truth. And I think this whole experience of my life and all the things that have happened to me, it kind of like kept bringing me back to getting to know that little voice over and over again, and knowing that that is more true than what my neurology says is true. And I just wanted to share that.
Very brave of you to share that story. So you're actually talking about the like sort of quote unquote the kind of gut feeling that you had before that something was off. Especially, I think most women can certainly understand that. Women are maybe more in touch with their intuition usually, I would say. Whereas because we do face, I would say, still more dangers. And so we're actually we have to kind of like listen to it more. But do you think there was also sort of a process involved in getting over or accepting what happened and moving on, forgiving yourself for not having left at that point where you felt like, oh, maybe something is unsafe or I don't feel comfortable anymore or something like that? Was that a part of the process for you to move on from that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think like a lot of us will resonate with this. Like, I would tell myself, like, oh, that was so stupid. You could have done better. You know better, blah, blah, like a whole reel in your head where you kind of go off and say, how stupid, like, why would you do that? But it took years to kind of keep forgiving myself. And, like to this day, like there's still like micro instances where I start arguing with myself over like, decisions or actions and things I want to do. But I need to keep coming back to like forgiving myself. And also like the second part of it is learning to trust myself. One of my teachers, she was also bringing this up in a class yesterday, and it kind of re-reminded me of like the way we learn to trust ourselves is by doing the things we say we will and doing them, and they can be incredibly small to begin with. And so I kind of, let's say over the last few years, I went back to doing these simple things where like my calendar is my personal religion, to quote my teacher. Like everything that I say is important to me and that I think needs to be in my life is in my calendar. And if it's not, then, probably it's not that important to me. And I hold myself accountable by showing up to the things that I say I will. And that creates that little bit more trust of me in myself and my ability to keep doing the things. So, whether it's, I don't know, setting up a meeting or setting up time to create or showing up to a class or, whatever the thing is, by doing it over and over and over and over again and like consistently doing it, I'm teaching my nervous system that, listen, it's safe. I got this. You don't need to panic. Like I will do what's necessary, which then uncovers this layer of, that little voice, that intuition, that gut feeling, which, like I said, contains more of the truth than that neurological part of me, which just wants to be like, I don't want to do this. I just want to, sit on my couch and like watch Netflix, which is also true. Like I do sometimes, right? But I also know that I can hold myself accountable and not do it and do it at a time that is appropriate. And it's the same thing with relationships and situations, and people are relationships and everything's in relationship, right? Because we're all relating to each other in some way. And so it's, like this tandem of both trusting that I will do what I need to, like today, and then also for the long run, because it's a marathon, and also listening to that part of me that says, hey, something's off. And again, like I think there's this big word, like recently I came to think about it as like, oh my God, wisdom is a big, big word. We throw it around a lot, but I don't know if we actually use it correctly. I'm contemplating this myself at this point, right? It's like wisdom comes from having done something, however many times, and then realizing that, okay, it's not working. I need to do it better. And then adding this component of kindness and grace to like saying, okay, I did something when I was however many years old or like 5 hours ago. That's already done. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Moving on. How are we going to do this better? That process, like, again, it sounds so simple, but it's not, because it takes a lot out of a person, I think, to even acknowledge it and then to actually do something about it. There's so many things that I need to adjust because none of the stuff I've been doing before is correct or for me, or it doesn't fit with my idea of myself. And, that can be a huge and overwhelming task. And then, I can just be like, right, I'm just going to sit on my couch. I can't do this. It's too much. Or I can be like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and see the sunrise. And then I'll do it every day for a week. And then I'll do it every day for 3.5 years. And now I know I can trust myself to take on a bigger and bigger task, and it's okay. And I'm not overwhelmed.
Yeah, so don't you think there's also a sort of very fine line and sometimes a huge disparity between societal expectations of like a certain code of conduct and especially in social interactions where you might feel like, oh, I don't really feel comfortable around this person, but you can't really, you can't really say, okay, I'm not interested in talking to you anymore and just walk off, right? There's a sort of difficult thing to manage sometimes to actually listen to your gut feeling and what you actually want to do for yourself, like respecting yourself sort of in that way, but then also meeting societal expectations where you just can't go, oh, you're really boring, or I don't feel comfortable around you, bye bye, you know.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't subscribe to that school of thought anymore. Because, like I was saying, that there's certain things that I understood I was doing that were trying to please, society, bigger quotes, like, and those expectations of me, and like trying to be this person that would make everyone around me happy and like and not ruffle any feathers and
Mm-hmm.
meet expectations and all sorts. And I was a very good diplomat in the sense of I would try to find middle points between, okay, if this is what's expected of me, but I want this other thing, how do I find that midway point between, making you happy and also making me happy? Then I'd lose out on something. I would inevitably like give up some part of me that would eventually tear me down.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like some debilitating panic attacks for about 2.5 years, 3 years, and it was almost near hourly. And then I came to realize that that was happening because every single waking moment, I spent my energy on trying to please other people and like these ideas that I'd taken upon myself. But I don't even know if it's true that anyone had them of me. I took that upon myself and thought, okay, I need to behave in X, Y, and Z fashion and do these number of things as like a good daughter and be a good friend in this whatever manner. And none of those things were true. They weren't true for me. And so what I realized was like once I kind of started looking at all these ideas, like you said, like societal expectations, I think they're constructs that we make for each other in a way to help everyone get in line to a degree. And I don't know if they're true. They don't really make sense to me anymore. And so the more like, and I can only speak for myself. I don't know what other people are doing, right? The more I kind of looked at that, I went, right, none of this is making me happy. I need to do what makes me happy because in the long run, when I'm dead, no one's going to know or remember anything other than, how I showed up or how I made other people feel. Um, and so in situations where, let's say, someone doesn't make me comfortable today, like today, I just turn around and leave. I don't say anything necessarily. Um, I might be like, thanks for your time and turn around and literally just walk away because I know that it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't. And I'm not so much fussed about somebody's feelings getting hurt because of how they feel about it, because I can't control them. My actions and how somebody else interprets them, it's not my responsibility. I can only do what I can do, which is control me. And I think like the other part of it is that like going to jujitsu amongst a lot of my other practices has taught me this kind of like holding my boundary and maintaining my space in situations because I physically, I could potentially harm someone. So that gives like a layer of confidence. But it's also about just kind of walking or stepping into situations knowing, okay, here's what I have and here's what I can do and what's okay for me and what I don't feel safe with and what do I need to do in order to change that. And also, do I have my own back? I mean, I think that's the most important thing, especially for women in a lot of situations. Like we tend to please people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't buy that anymore. Like I want to like love on my friends, right? I want them to feel good and I want to be there to support them in ways that I can when I can. But I'm not going to also do it because I think they want me to do it. And there's a
Mm.
difference, right? I will like if I don't want to talk to one of them, today I'm more than okay saying, listen, I don't want to talk, we'll talk later, or whatever it is that's valid. And I think our relationships of like my relationships with my friends have gotten deeper and stronger because of that, because of the way I tend to behave with them. I think they're behaving and relating to me in a very similar way, which then opens up space for them to behave and show up in the world more affirmed and stronger and more capable because they know that it's okay to say how they feel because I'm doing that. So it kind of gives the other person that kind of permission to be the same. And I
Right.
think the more of us that we do this for each other, like it kind of creates that openness and that space of saying what's true and doing what's right for us. Because what's safe for me may not be safe for you, like, or, the other way around. Like, you
Mm.
might be very comfortable deep diving in the ocean. I'm comfortable surfing it. Like, and it's different,
Mm.
right? And you're going to react differently to it, as will I. And so the more you're able to articulate that and show up in that kind of truth, show up entirely in a way that's true for you, the more powerful you become because then you have an option, you have a choice.
Yeah, that's very inspiring, I think. I personally feel like there's still, I'm trying not to be asocial and just walk away. But at the same time, be true to myself and what I feel like and my values and so on. But I think, yeah, a lot of people these days try to be more truthful to themselves or what they feel and think, juggling those two feelings of maybe not being appreciated as much because you just walked off, but then also you were true to yourself.
Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Mm.
I think that's true. Like the people who get you and who know you and who appreciate you and love you in a way that counts, they don't mind. Like if you're not feeling good or you're feeling sleepy and you want to leave and the party's boring, like okay, it's fine, right? And if somebody does mind, maybe they're not your people and maybe they don't know you. And I personally think who gives a shit? Like it's your life. You only have so many hours in a day and in this lifetime, right? If you spend even 2 minutes thinking about what someone else is thinking, you're already wasting 2 minutes of your life that no one's going to give back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Honestly, I don't think any of us get paid enough to give a shit. And again, and I'm only tying money into this story because like time is money in the sense of that is your biggest currency. So you're
Mm.
either paying attention to the things that matter to you, and that's where you're spending, your money, your time, your energy, or you're spending energy on things that don't matter and will never actually matter. Do I really care that like Tomer down the street thinks I'm an idiot? No. Okay, every time my dog barks, it's because somebody's walking next to our door, right? And one
Mm.
of my neighbors, every time he walks by, Punk barks, and then he starts yelling, and Punk barks even more because he's reacting to this angry, violent, whatever energy. Do I care that this man is halfway toward giving himself a heart attack because he's frustrated that a dog is barking at him and that dog happens to be mine? No, like I really don't. It's his problem. It's his stuff to deal with. And again, I'm going to quote my teacher because this sentence is epic. It's his shit, not my shit. So I don't care. Reckless and dangerous, yes, I care. If it's like this person is just angry and they don't know how to control themselves, I don't care. Like that's his problem. It's not mine. It doesn't
Mm.
serve me in the long run. What does serve me is like, okay, nothing happened. We're all fine. What matters to me are, I don't know, things like showing up to where I say I will and getting the things that are important to me, getting those things done and making sure like my people are safe and okay and they've got their needs taken care of. And again, it doesn't have to be like on a like daily basis. I can just touch base with my people once in a while and I know everything's good. I had to learn this the hard way is that if I haven't saved up energy to take care of myself and I'm trying to take care of someone else, it doesn't help anyone. Is that really beneficial? Like, do two drunks make a sober? No.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't work. Two minuses make a plus in math, sure, but you need to have the proper conditions set up. If you just put two minuses next to each other, they don't become a plus. So, like, you know, in the same vein of thought, like, if we're not doing what we need to do for ourselves, then, like, what does it matter what anyone thinks of us? And that space where we can give, and then give it to the things that count. What you were saying about the extreme case of individualism, I mean, there's always a risk of, like, some outliers and some people who just go so into themselves that they don't come out, of course. But I think the general direction that you start to head in, once you've kind of worked on yourself and figured out what makes the most sense for you, is that sense of community and the sense of your life being in relation to everyone else's life. So what I say about, like, me not giving a crap about Tomer down the street, in a sense, is that I don't particularly mind, and I'm not going to waste my energy on that kind of thing. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I know that if something were to happen, let's say Tomer were screaming and he fainted, I'm still a human being, and I would care about the human being, not necessarily his reaction. Does that make sense? Like, I think they're two different components in a way. Like, they're interconnected. As soon as you figure out who you are and what's important to you and what you want to be doing and how you want to show up in the world, you you also simultaneously understand that that is all interconnected with the people around you, which then spreads, first it'll spread to your closest people, and then it'll spread to, like, kind of a larger humanness, like the humankind, because we are all interconnected no matter which way you go, and everything is in relationship to the next thing. In order for that relationship to happen, you also need to understand that you are a person on a specific line, and the entire net, like, okay, let's do this, right? Like, if you have a giant net and you have, like, all these strings that are going horizontally and vertically, right? If you take one string out, the whole net kind of collapses because you're pulling it, that string away, and it's not held together anymore, and it morphs, right? In
Mhm.
this similar kind of way, like, each and every single one of us is on this specific line, on a specific thread, but it's all interconnected horizontally and vertically. And so you have this mesh, and it only stays in place if and when each and every single one of us is in our specific place and doing what we're kind of wanting or needing or, destined to do in a way. And again, destiny kind of opens up another another conversation. But what I'm trying to get at is that the more solid you are in being yourself, the more that opens up space for a conversation for all of us. And it's a very important one.
So one doesn't necessarily negate the other. Like individualism doesn't necessarily bring on like sort of an extreme form of an egotistical society, but like just individuals eventually coming together as one if it's like important or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, I thought of another one. So in dog packs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single dog is in a way out for himself, but they're a pack. And in that pack, you have the alpha who's in the front, and you have the middle of the pack dogs who are happy to be in the middle of the pack. And then you have the back of the pack dogs who are looking and coordinating with the front of the pack, like the alphas or the alpha, to make sure that no one is chasing them and they're safe. And every single dog knows exactly where they fall in their pack, and no one tries to be in the place that they're not supposed to be. Like, no dog is going to go and try to over alpha the alpha.
Right.
right? The back of the pack dog stays at the back of the pack because that's his temperament. That's what he's good at. She, like that's where they're meant to be. And
Hmm.
that keeps the whole thing together. Knowing your place is one of the biggest, most powerful things you can do. And knowing and understanding both your strengths and your weaknesses is what makes this whole structure of humanity work. We need doctors and we need architects and we need the engineers and the artists and the musicians just as much as we need the street cleaner and the cooks and the hairdressers. And if, let's say, you know, and I'm not okay, and I'm not taking out the possibility that a hairdresser can also be an architect. They very well might be, but knowing that okay, I'm a really great hairdresser and owning that and being that better or best or whatever hairdresser every single day makes you that much more powerful because then the rest of the architect and the cleaner and the cook can be even better in what they're doing, and that kind of has this like circle, and
Hmm.
you kind of you will go and eat and you will get your hair cut and you will need to walk into a building and someone needs to do all of those things, and the better you are at doing what you do, the more joy there is.
Yeah, each their speciality, sort of. So you mentioned before that you were having panic attacks for about 2 years. How did you actually manage to live with those, or actually transform them into being less of a burden, maybe, or to get them to, I don't know, fade away?
That was a long, big, hard one. So when I had my first panic attack, I thought I was dying.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up at the hospital a few minutes later, and uh, the doctor looked at me and kept asking, like, what had I had to drink or eat? And I don't know, all I could think about was, fuck, I'm dying. Like, those were the only two words in my head. And those two words, well, those three words stuck for about 2 years. Um, And what really helped me was one, knowing what a panic attack is. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew on pen and paper, because I'd studied psychology, I guess that was a plus one in a way. I knew what it was on pen and paper, but then when I'd experienced it, it took on a whole different turn. But again, I'd started practicing yoga, so I knew a few breath techniques to kind of calm myself. Um, so I did that for about 2.5 years. It had come to a point where I needed help. Like I could only do so much on myself. Like like a surgeon can't really operate himself, and that's kind of what I'd come to realize. And so I've happened to meet with a life coach, um, and I went to her for a month. So every single day, like 30 days, I was in her office every day at noon. She handed my ass to me in the most beautiful and delightful way. And it was one of the most beautiful things because she very directionally and intentionally, she would just give me little bits and pieces that I could do and ways I could transform my thinking into, again, trusting myself even more and into seeing the bright side or like the better side. Because my mind, like, if I leave it alone, it will default into all the things that can go wrong. Everyone is horrible. Someone's out to get me. Someone's going to kill me. Um, I'm wrecked. I'm not doing it right. All the horrible things. And so she very intentionally like directed me in a way that I could suddenly see a bigger picture of how not everything is horrible. Not everyone's out to kill me. I'm fine. I just need to get a certain number of things in my life in order. And it was a long process because, like I said, it was about 2.5 years before I went to see her. And the whole time I would wake up, or let's say I wouldn't even wake up because I would kind of doze off because my body wouldn't be able to stay awake anymore. And the whole time I'd be thinking like, fuck, I'm dying. And then I came to realize that the reason those were my three words were because I'd spent, at that point, like 20, I think it was 24, 25. I'd spent 25 years basically trying to be someone I'm not. And my biggest fear was that I was going to die an imposter to myself too. Because I was faking so much of so many things. Like I had curly hair and I would straighten it every day because, I don't want to have curly hair, or like it was embarrassing, or like what are, everyone's got straight hair. I need to fit into that mold. And then I was, I don't know, putting on makeup for an hour and a half a day. Like now when I think about it, I'm like, who, why? But I was doing that again, to fit into this mold of this like uh, person, and like kind of like a Barbie character that was
Mm.
really good and did all the right things, and had a really high paying job and skipped around on heels and sat like a lady and behaved in a ladylike way and had all the right friends. And I put all of these things in giant air quotations because when I started having my panic attacks, I went, holy crap, like all of these people that are around me, I don't know them. I really don't. Like, I only know very superficial things about them. They don't really care about me. And like, I suddenly, like, it was like a veil had lifted, and I suddenly started seeing how they don't actually care about me. And I was trying my hardest to be liked while I'm wearing a costume, and I was trying my hardest to kind of appease all these parts of society that I didn't actually care about at all. Um, and that's why something has ripped in me, like, and it just like, like this whole structure of who I thought I was and all the things I was doing started falling apart because none of it was based on any real belief or ideologies or anything that I actually wanted to be.
Hmm.
And then I guess like after that, so this was the year that I'd gone to Moscow, so about 5 years from now. That's when I started turning this shit cake upside down. And shit cake is a term that again Kent Hoffman gifted me when I was in college. So he said that basically what all of us are doing is we have a pile of shit and then we try to layer it with icing.
Hmm.
And then one day when you cut the cake and you're really excited because there's all this icing and you cut it, it's still shit underneath. And that's when I kind of realized what he talked about when I started having my panic attacks was that, okay, this is the shit cake he's talking about. Because now I cut through it and underneath it's still shit, like all of it. And none of it is making me happy. And it's doing the opposite. And all these structures that I'd kind of built to protect myself were the cause of all my misery. That, like how I dressed, what I talked about, where I went, who I was with, what I was doing, why I was doing it, all of it was just a joke. And so eventually, by the time I got to Moscow, I started unraveling in like the most, for me, in the most profound way, like trying to see under all the layers of icing and underneath all of the layers of shit, which frankly, like to this day, I'm discovering more shit that I go, oh wait, there's this little other thing. Why do I do that? And the more I kind of uncover these layers, the more I get to know myself. And again, like we were talking about before, is the more I get to know these parts of myself, the more I see my strengths and my weaknesses and how both of those play together and how I can use one or the other in different circumstances, and then how I get better from there. And it's not there's no end game, I think. Like it just continues.
Hmm.
And like an onion, kind of like the more layers I peel back, the more I go, oh, wait, there's another one still. Cool. Let's deal with this one. And every day it's a different thing, right?
What would you recommend for our listeners, what they could do to maybe uncover what they truly want to be, how they want to be, how they can live their truth more honestly?
Oh wow, that is such a big one because
Yeah, that's a very easy question.
I started. I mean, I don't like. Look, it's not a recipe. It is, but it isn't at the same time. I think like every single one of us might come to it in our own way at our own time, right? What I had started with was meditation, and that calmed me down. Now, again, meditation doesn't work for everyone. If you're really anxious and you've never looked at your anxiety up close, it can be really upsetting and frightening, and it can do a lot more damage to your psyche than good. So it kind of depends on the person. But like I started with meditation and breath work, and I was doing yoga, and I knew that the physical aspect of just moving helped me to calm my mind, which then allowed me to kind of introspect and dig in and find all these like shitty corners. But also my yoga practice, like from the beginning, like I knew that I was doing the movement as a way to get to my head. The movement wasn't just for the sake of getting stronger or more flexible or, any of the physical aspects. Like I knew that I needed to move so I could process my thoughts and emotions. So for every one of us, I think it's going to be a different game. For somebody, it might be, I don't know, the other way around in the sense of somebody might want to start with journaling because also when you start journaling, you can see all the stuff that you're complaining about. And then that
Mhm.
gives you an insight into, okay, what are all the things that I'm complaining about? And maybe how do I change it or change the script or how do I look at it differently? I also know that again, we're going to come back to jujitsu. Like that was another layer and another component that I found, and I found it in Israel. So all of the work that I'd kind of done before on myself came to a came to its like biggest test at jujitsu because when you have like a 120-kilogram guy like trying to sit on top of you and you need to get out, all your
Mm.
bugs start coming out of your head because that's that's your instincts and your reactions and how you think and whether you can control your breath long enough to calm down because breath allows for you to steady yourself. So I think like jujitsu for me was like a grand big, and it still is like a grand big test of all the stuff that I'd worked on, because now when somebody sits on me I'm super calm, which is like a metaphor in a way for like a situation that could come at me and be like intensely heavy and sweaty and gross and try to kill me, and I'll be okay. Or I think I will be because I know I have a certain number of tools at my disposal.
Mm.
So to answer your question, it kind of depends on the person and what kind of tools they're going to start to find, acquire, and place in their back pocket. Because you can have a Swiss Army knife, or you can just have like a hammer. But a hammer is not going to solve every situation because you can't fix everything with a hammer. So you
Right.
need to kind of look at what are your skill sets and what are the tools that you need.
So you think it's more about
Um,
empowerment or feeling empowered rather than doing something entirely different, but actually realizing that you have powers mentally, physically, and so on, and more realizing your actual strength, right?
Yes. And the other part is working on things that do make you better. So, like meditation is insight, right? It gives
Hmm.
you something where you can sit down and either notice your thoughts and not associate yourself with them. Because, like most of us, we tend to ride the thought bus of like, oh, it's raining outside. Oh, I need an umbrella. Oh, crap, I didn't buy an umbrella. What a shitty day. Oh, you're an idiot. Why didn't you buy an umbrella? Stupid. Now my whole day is ruined. What are you going to do? No, no, no. And, it's like this,
Hmm.
it like
Downward
escalates.
spiral.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, you're an idiot. You always do this, and you're like that, and like awful, 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 and then you start layering on with like all the stupid stuff you did like 5 years ago, and suddenly you're sitting at home crying. Like you could have a tool where you start to breathe and go, right, having this thought. And
Mm,
then it's like, it's not, that's not my thought. I'm not the thought. I don't belong to the thought. The thought doesn't belong to me. It's like having a thought and you disassociate, and then you can kind of free up some mental space to do or think or feel however you need to.
right.
In terms of feelings, I mean, another one of my tools was kind of um, going through this book that Danielle Laporte puts out. It's called The Desire Map. It took me about a year. So Danielle Laporte's workbook, it kind of takes you through this process of stating your desires and how you really want to feel. So most of us, we kind of go through our lives and our days just feeling the feeling of whatever comes up. So like, oh, I feel sad, and you'll feel sad. But what, like, from my understanding or like my interpretation of like Danielle's work is you can choose how you want to feel that day. And so what I did for a whole year was I had a whole list of feelings that I wanted to experience. So let's say I wanted to experience powerful. So I was like in my planner, I would put down powerful, and through the day I would practice feeling powerful in whichever way I could. And then I would kind of see, oh, this is how it feels, and then kind of carry that onward. And that's also a tool because like now, because I have like a whole, let's say, a plethora of words and feelings to choose from, and they're not just angry, sad, depressed, anxious. I have, okay, let's see. I'm going to pull up some and say, okay, so I can feel dynamic, or I can feel fascinating, or eager, or festive, or focused, right? And they're all feeling states. I can choose how I want to feel and kind of switch into that gear when I need to. So I'm not limiting myself to like kind of the primary and basic emotions. I can go and switch into the thing I want to feel. You can decide or you can choose to learn. And it's really powerful, I think, because choosing your feelings gives you like one more option and one more thing that you can play with.
Thanks to Elizabeth for sharing her story so courageously. We will have her social media links in the show notes. And if you do feel like you need to talk to somebody or you need some kind of support, please check out your local national helpline. And we will also have some links on the show notes. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Upfront Podcast. We will be back next week.